objectives for today are to describe the impact of historical trauma on the sense of agency and ownership, to identify the four dimensions of authentic leadership from a trauma-informed lens, and to learn how to integrate leadership and professional skills to promote socioeconomic justice. So I'm hoping that you all will leave with those three objectives. First, I want to talk about historical trauma, and I want to say this is not a history lesson of all the historical trauma from that every single race and ethnicity has experienced globally. I would not have the time to do that. And so I just want to say that if someone is not represented in the information, it's not to not acknowledge your historical trauma. The examples and things that I'm mentioning are really for the purpose of helping us to understand how these examples can spill over into multi-generational trauma. So I just want to give that disclaimer so that no one feels like their trauma has not been acknowledged. Historical trauma is a cumulative emotional and psychological wounding over the lifespan and across generations, emanating from massive group trauma experiences. Multi-generational trauma experienced by specific cultural, racial, or ethnic groups, and it's related to major events that oppressed a particular group of people because of their status as oppressed, such as slavery, forced migration, colonization, the Holocaust, mass incarceration, etc. So I want to just mention here some laws and actual public policies that created historical trauma. You're talking about chattel slavery, Black codes, Jim Crow laws, war on drugs, sentencing laws, immigration laws, concentration camps, religious persecution, child welfare laws, and there's Homestead Act of 1862, voting rights, and property rights. And these are just some areas where actually were laws and public policies in place to oppress groups of people that resulted in historical trauma. And I am going to talk in detail about some of these, but not all of these. Then I want to mention how public service or public servants have acted, their discriminatory practices that have created historical trauma. And these are people, again, that are public service, human service professionals. So whether you're talking about police brutality, racial profiling, healthcare discrimination, housing discrimination, financial discrimination, academic discrimination, military discrimination, these are all actual practices of people who were professionals, public servants that have abused their authority and created this historical trauma. I want to speak a little bit on some, like, as I mentioned, some specific major events. I want to talk about the forgotten victims of the Holocaust. Most times when we've heard and when we were taught about the Holocaust, the Black experience was left out of that. I know I didn't learn that when I was in school. It wasn't even mentioned that, there were Black people, Black victims of the Holocaust. So I just want to mention that here. The fact that little attention has been given to the experiences of Black victims of Holocaust can be traumatic in and of itself. And there were several concentration camps in Africa, and some led to the extermination in 1904 of whole tribes. And one of these camps, which is infamously known as the Shark Island, was considered a death by labor camp, and it was predominantly made of Africans. And then with that being said, after the World War, when people in the military returned back to America, what was found in some of their research was that a lot of the Nazi racial policy was enforced, and they identified at least 27 United States that had adopted the forced sterilization laws that were based on German eugenics pseudoscience, right? Which was the whole concept that, there was a supreme race and supreme intelligence and all of that was associated with a certain race. And so the United States had adopted, even after the World War was over, had adopted those policies.